Darlings, I have literally just had an eye-opening experience with an incredible guest, Dr. Pat Boulogne. I keep saying her name like that. I can't help it. She is a master medical practitioner, but like function medicine, I think is what it's called. Phenomenal. Really, just the first person that I've spoken to for a long time that understands the concept of food combining and an acidity in your diet and how that affects you. And listen, we're all trying to live as long as possible. We're all trying to be as healthy as possible, but still live our lives and enjoy our lives. Dr. Pat has this incredible book, Why Are You Sick, Fat and Tired? It certainly got my attention, and I knew I had to speak to her. Darlings, you are going to have your eyes opened and hopefully be inspired to actually take action and start really kind of taking the reins in your own physical and mental health. I certainly learned a lot, and I've already told her that we need to speak again in a couple of months. So meet Dr. Pat Boulogne. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Living Out Loud with Loretta. Dr. Patricia Boulogne. Now, I need you to pronounce your surname because I feel like it's French. Please introduce yourself.
It is French, and you said it correctly. Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, first, before we get into the real proper nitty-gritty, how do you have a French name?
Well, this is very interesting. I have done some genealogy research, and that name is French. That is my married name, but my family lineage goes back to France from the 1600s, very early 1600s, 1592 to something like that. One of my ancestors was an apothecary to the House of Bourbon. And I always say that the DNA hasn't changed in 400 years. Yeah, that's true.
Because an apothecary back in the day was someone that dealt with medicine, with sort of natural remedies and things like that. So it makes sense that you yourself, you are a certified functional medicine practitioner. You are a coach. You are a chiropractor and a public speaker and an author. Now, your book title is what got me, like, I was like, okay, this is someone I need to speak to. You have a best-selling book, and it's called Why Are You Sick, Fat and Tired? Please explain to me and my audience how and why you decided to write this book.
Well, one thing is that I was retired for a bit, and when I looked around, I would see sick people everywhere I looked. I mean, Chinese medicine, I'm a Chinese physician also, and you always look at the face. You look at, you have pulse. You look at the tongue, and so it really bothered me that there were so many people sick, and they just kind of were like, waiting for whatever happens when I'm 40 or when I'm 50 or whatever familiar disease, is. Lurking in the family. But if you ever notice, not everybody in the family gets the same disease, True. And so my thing was that when I started looking around, I said, there's got to be something that's like a common denominator. And I would ask people, questions. I would be walking through downtown Boston, and I would ask people questions all the time, like, you don't feel well today, do you? And then people would say, no, I don't. I don't know what I ate last night, or whatever the answer was. We ended up having a conversation about it. And when you walk around, and I used to live near the financial district, so when you walk around in that area, you used to see the same people all the time. And so people would say, like, oh, whatever you told me to do, that thing that you told me to do with the charcoal, that worked, and so it was really, it was kind of like, I was kind of semi-retired at the time. And then I decided to go back to school and get my degree in my master's in Oriental medicine. And I'm a diplomate in that level and that status. But the book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired, is what occurred to me is that people, you look in a mirror and you can kind of get, I'm heavy or I'm a little bit overweight, but people don't know when they're sick. Being sick takes, a time to express itself. And in the years that I've been in practice, a lot of like men, for instance, they don't really complain about their health until they're around 40. And then they have kind of their first instance. So things are pretty dandy. And men, generally speaking, if you ask them, even unless they're throwing up in a toilet, how's their health? They'll tell you great. Doesn't matter what's going on. And, and they don't relate to, like specific things, like, oh, if they had like a stomach virus of some sort, they would just think, oh, it's just, throwing up in the toilet, that's sick. But they don't realize that a lot of sicknesses take a while to manifest. We've seen a lot in COVID, people who seem healthy, and when they get this virus, which there's a 99% survival rate, die. And so sometimes those things that are lurking below the surface that people, what I call them is Grim Reaper syndrome, because they don't pay attention to the signs and symptoms, and or their family said, oh, I had that when I was that age, don't worry about it. And then you have to you have to really pay attention. As you age, things happen and you want to age gracefully, but being sick takes a while to manifest. And when you do get sick, when there's something else going on, like even when people have the flu, they have that same experience called the cytokine storm. You've got to respect your body, you've got to respect your health, and you've got to pay attention to your environment, because there's really only 3 reasons why people get sick. And they all have one thing in commmen.
Okay.
Yeah. So
tell me, I'm
you want to know them, right?
I'm hanging on every single word. What are the three?
The first, one thing that they have in common is inflammation. And the first, and the 3, I call them 3 T's, and the 3 T's are, the first one's trauma, the second one's toxins, and the third one is thoughts. And so the first one, the trauma, when a child is born, 9 out of 10 children when they're born have some type of cervical damage from the birthing process. Most people don't think about taking their kids to a chiropractor, more so now. And I've worked in offices where I've helped doctors, cover when they've been on vacation, that have big pediatric practices where, little babies are like, as soon as they come out of the chute, they're in there getting adjusted. So it's important to keep that alignment function. If you don't have good structure, you can't have good function. But that's the beginning of inflammation in the body. There's a reason why people, start to bend over like this, is because they keep on exercising, though, not equally, the flexors which bend forward and the extensors which keep you standing up. So there's that aspect of that. And then the toxins, because we live in an incredibly toxic environment. We have, the air that we breathe, we have the food that we eat, we have the water that we drink. I mean, tap water has fluorine in it. Fluorine is a neurotoxin. It is not something that you want to put in your body. In the air, you have chemtrails. I mean, it's just like in Boston, I used to watch the planes go off all the time. So I used to live downtown Boston, and you would see chemtrails in the air. They just hang there. When I was a kid, those weren't called chemtrails. They were exhausts from the planes, and they disappeared. Almost like, I can remember thinking like it just rolls it up, and but now they just hover, and they have barium. They have a lot of heavy metals in it that eventually float down into, back into our atmosphere. So, and then you have thoughts. With the look on your face, you remind me when I used to first give talks in my office, because people would start, they were smiling, and the next thing you know, but after we were talking about food or something like this, their faces were like, oh my God, kind of look.
Literally, my poor little brain is going 10 to the dozen, and now you're talking about thoughts, because that to me is like, okay, really, we can think ourselves into sickness? Please explain before I'm spiraling right now.
Yes, it's true because, when you keep on, like if you ever eat something and then you get upset, you don't digest your food. So a lot of those emotions go directly to the stomach. You have people who that are incredibly oversympathetic and, or they worry too much, that all goes to like your body, and your body gets stressed out by that. And thoughts can undo any good that you do to like go to a chiropractor, get your body line, make sure you have, good posture and good structure, and also eat foods and use like green clean like cleaning fluids and things like this in your house and your garden being organic. It can undo though so fast because of your thoughts. And so depression, they used to think that depression was from the brain. It's not from the brain, it's from the gut. And most of your serotonin in your body and your immune system, there's called a thing called SIG-A, that's all in your gut. So if you don't, if you eat bad foods, if you eat things that are processed and you don't, and you're don't digest foods, like you don't digest foods. The problem with a lot of people and allergies, people think you're going to have an allergy and the reactions immediately. When you're eating food, your food reaction to a food that you probably might not or should not eat can be anywhere up to like maybe a week later. It's
Wow.
it's not necessarily going to be, right immediately. So it's hard to tie those into a specific, like emotion or whatever. I always tell people to take a diet diary. Nobody cares how many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches you eat if you do that stuff, or whatever it is, or eggs that you eat. What you want to know is what kind of foods you're eating and how you feel afterwards. And if you can track of that, then you can kind of like map it out for yourself. So you can say like, hey, every time I eat ice cream, I don't sleep well. So that's a big component. And the big thing that's, like I said before, that's all, tied in with all of those is inflammation. So when you have
explain, can you explain to me inflammation? Because when you've said inflammation a few times, and what appears in my head is like, just you get stung by a mosquito or whatever, and you get a reaction, which you get a big blow up of your arm or hand or whatever. What is the type of inflammation that can happen in the body in the way that you're talking about?
Well, when you have there's only one layer of cells in the lining of the intestinal tract. So if your intestinal tract gets injured because of poor foods or consecutive, like eating things like sugar or eating, processed foods and eating them for years, look at the example of the guy who ate McDonald's like for a month, something like that, and he gained 18 pounds. There's a lot of salt, there's a lot of sugar, there's things in your food that if you like, my theory is, and my belief is, if you can't pronounce something that's in the ingredient list on a label, you shouldn't put it in your mouth. And, you should keep, your foods down to like, 5 items, like 5 ingredients, like, lettuce, for instance, shrimp, and, and like a nice, vegetable and a protein, and watch, how you combine it. But inflammation is something that can be very insidious, and you don't really know that it's starting. Like when people start to have, there's a thing called leaky gut syndrome. And leaky gut syndrome is when a hole is like punched through from, poor foods and it's called tight junction. So a tight junction is like your gloves in your hands going like this and fitting together. What happens is when it gets damaged, it starts to loosen up and it starts to separate. So when you eat food and it's not digested correctly or well enough, sometimes it can seep into the blood system. And when it does that, you start having like an insidious, like a little bit of it, like a reaction to it. And then all those toxins, that blood goes to the liver, because the liver synthesizes blood. That's one of its functions. And then it's supposed to take those toxins and put them in your intestinal tract, or if they're small enough, they take them and they put them into, like, those particles go down to the bladder. And then you either pee them out or you poop them out, one or the other. And but when the liver gets overwhelmed with so many toxins, it has no other choice but to take those toxins and store them in blood, brain, bone, and fat. So if you look at, fatty tissue is one of the big places where cancer has a tendency to go fester. And it's like having a perpetual, like, sliver underneath, underneath your skin and not being able to get rid of it. It's like people talk about having sepsis when the blood gets poisoned. There's, it's kind of, that's inflammation. If something that has the word itis, ITS, like that's inflammation. So it can happen anywhere in the body, but everyone has a weak link.
Okay, so you come from the medicine. It's in your blood. It's in your lineage. I saw from doing some research on you that you've been doing this and speaking about it and practicing it for over 35 years. So were your parents, were they very, very conscious about health and what they gave to you as a child? And is that how you started practicing? Or is it something that you, on your own decided, this is something that's, I have a calling to understand medicine and understand how it relates to our bodies and how our bodies react, et cetera, et cetera. How did you get started?
My mother always we always had a garden. And so when my mother was growing up, my mother had, our mothers had our organic food. If you can drink water and if you can keep your body somewhere around 7.26, right around in that tight area, it is said that most people don't have, it's impossible for an illness to really exist in that pH. I mean, there's pH strips that you can test water with. There's pH strips. I mean, if you put a pH strip in like a glass of wine, it's going to be acid. But it's like how you mix things. It's like the chemistry of how you mix food. That's why I always talk to people about food combining. Because if you can chemically put your food together correctly, your body will use that as a better source of energy than having something sugary and sweet or a sugary drink, that type of thing. And
okay,
so you can't ever have something, right?
This is fascinating to me because in 1997 I was doing my first show or second show out of drama school, and it was To Kill a Mockingbird, and one of the characters, I can't remember what role she played, but she would always, every time I'd see her, and we were out of London, it was a tour, so we were rehearsing, then we would tour around the country. And I remember in rehearsals, she would always, every morning, she'd have like a bunch of grapes in her hand or an apple or an orange, and she was so slender and always had a lot of energy, and she was an older woman, and I remember one lunchtime sort of saying to her, I can't remember her name now, but you're always eating fruit, or what is it that you do? How is it that you eat? So that first of all, you've got the body that you always have so much more energy than the rest of us. What is it that you do? She was the first one that introduced me to food combining. So not combining your proteins with your carbohydrates. So if you're, whatever meal it is going to be, you have protein with vegetables or salad, and same thing with dinner. Just don't put the two together. And something about the amount of energy it takes your body to have to digest both of those, the protein and the carbs. It works better. And then, and I had never heard so many people, like many other people, speaking about this. She introduced me to a book. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the book now. I didn't know that you were going to be doing food combining.
Fit for Life?
Fit for Life, I think it is. Yes.
Yeah. Fit for Life was one of the first food combining charts I ever saw. And the idea behind it is that, like when you eat, like you don't have a sweet fruit with a, bitter fruit. It just doesn't go. It's like when sometimes you go to a restaurant and you don't have anything to drink, you're just drinking water, or you're drinking, something like soda water. And then you leave, and the next day you wake up and you're hungover, and you're thinking, why am I hungover? It's because there's herbs that they cook with, or how they put the foods together that really don't work for your body, that makes your body work a lot harder to digest the foods and get the energy that it needs to get from them. Be nicer to your body, so that you can give your body an opportunity to heal. And sugar, it is well known that sugar, in any manner or form, is like, is very, like it will increase inflammation in the body. And so, and you should also, like, if anyone, like any of your listeners have like back pain, or they are in pain of some sort, they should pay attention to when they eat something and the next morning they're feeling a lot stiffer, or like it feels like there's like something a little bit like, oh, I must have tweaked my knee, or I must have been picked something up. When in reality, isn't that? It's the food that you're eating that's creating the inflammation.
Okay, so then this leads me to the next question. So what is the link? What is the connection between your diet, your lifestyle, and then our environment? Like how do the three of those make us potentially sicker or healthier? And how can we make improvements?
Well, first off, you have to, I have some Dr. Pat rules. And one of my Dr. Pat rules is you don't eat anything white. And
I'm sorry, say that again. You don't eat anything white?
White.
Really?
Like sugar, salt, and
so hold on. Does that
flour.
mean I shouldn't be drinking this?
Well, you could have that. I mean, like, there's always, if I knew you were going to have that, I would have joined you.
Self-care is very important, especially these days. One of the ways I practice self-care is to make, drink, and sell my own ginger tea with some extra special added immune boosting ingredients. How do you practice self-care?
So my Dr. Pat rule is like not eat anything white, because what white does, like for instance, salt in Chinese medicine is cold. And when it's cold, like moisture pools. And so you want to have, it's better to eat like warming foods. Like in the wintertime, it's like eat foods that have a higher temperature, like ginger and cayenne pepper, things like that. Those things are that warm the body up. Those are better things to eat. And
they're my favorites. They're my favorites. I brew my own ginger tea, and I'm trying to figure out how to get it on the market.
I like hot stuff. I like hot stuff.
Spicy, yes.
Yeah, and especially in the wintertime, I'm always gravitating towards that. In the summertime, you eat a little bit cooler. I mean, if you drink water ideally should be drunk, this is a good tip, at room temperature. If you can't stand the taste of water, and even if you don't, even if you do, you can always put lemon juice in the water, and especially before you eat, because it helps the right kind of acid come up in the stomach to help you digest better. That's just a simple, like, hack, over-the-counter hack type thing.
So just doing my own personal consultation with you now. So I am menopausal. So I am, first thing in the morning, I do start with a 16 ounce of room temperature water that's sitting by my bed. I always make sure I go to bed with a bottle and I can drink it first thing in the morning. And that does amazing things. It kind of it cleans you out, right? Like the loo is my office for the first 10-15 minutes of my day. Then as the day goes on, because I'm going through, 1 minute I'm feeling hot and sweaty, whatever, I have those swell bottles, so you can put ice in there and water in there and it stays cool, like, for the whole day. I have to drink those because that helps to cool down what feels like my inside, which is boiling up. Do you know what I mean? But I know that it's better to drink water at room temperature. So how can I counteract potentially what the damage that ice water might be doing? Like how?
Well, what ice water does is purported that it, it stops your digestion. So what you can do is you have to take a look at what food choices you're using. As my experience in women in menopause, and the signs and symptoms that go along with that, women who have a clean diet or a cleaner diet have less symptomatology. And so you've got to look at, what kind of foods are estrogen producing. So estrogen producing foods are like soy, things that had come out of plastic. So it's just being mindful of some of those things, putting them together. So the cleaner that you can eat and the more anti-inflammatory diet that you can do for yourself, the better it is. That's my experience in 38 years of, helping people, walk the walk and talk the talk.
That's a lot of experience, which I know personally I will benefit from, and so will my audience. Okay, so you said don't eat white foods and eat more kind of foods that will kind of warm you up, certainly around the winter time. Around now, it's easier. Some people cannot stand spicy foods though. So like my husband, he's slowly getting into eating spicier because I love spicy. So what about people that just really cannot stomach the flavor of cayenne pepper or spicy ginger tea or whatever? What can they do?
Well, for me, they can put lemon, and they can use cider vinegar. Those are two simple things to use. But for me, when somebody is that sensitive, I would want to see, in my book, there's 11 organ systems. And so those 11 organ systems, I keep on referring back to this as an analogy. The gloves have to fit, so and your organ systems work like a Swiss watch. So when one is overrunning, then it's going to detract from other parts of those other organ systems. So if the heart is having issues, then you got to take a look at the liver, you got to take a look at the kidneys, you got to take a look at the gut, you got to take a look at the spleen, you got to take a look at, like things, the lungs, you got to look at things that feed those organ systems. So when you're looking at like how to put the pieces of the puzzle together, you got to take a look at what's the pattern, what's your health snapshot now, because that's what the book gives you. It shows you where your weakest link is today, not like 5 months from now, and not when you're 10 years old. It shows you what your health snapshot is now. So then you know where to focus your energy, your time, and your money, so that you're not buying stuff because you read it in the book. I also tell people not to have electronics next to their bed, so like when you have your telephone, because you have so many electromagnetic frequencies going on in your house to begin with, that when you have like this, if you ever do one of the instrument that measures what the amps are and the frequency and the watts, even with the telephone, it's just like, that's why I always talk on the telephone with earphones. But sometimes I actually can feel like a spark in my ear coming up from the telephone.
It's interesting. And I've definitely heard this kind of thing before, and it makes it. I think I heard it years ago. So anytime I see anyone holding their phone to their ears to talk, like their mobile phone,
cringe. Right?
I'm always like, oh, because there's stuff coming out of there that's going maybe, So everyone should be on either their headphones or the wireless ones or whatever. But you're saying you still feel some sort of energetic pulse or whatever?
Well, it's not. No, I actually felt a spark, a couple of times. So when I do that, I like when I feel that, it's like I take my earphones out, and I will turn my telephone off at night. There's nothing, that's more annoying than somebody texting you at 2:00 in the morning, or, and you don't want to wake up because it changes your sleep cycle.
You're saying that we shouldn't even have the phone next to our bed, like plugged in and charging. It should be just as far away as possible.
Yes.
Is that for distraction or for health purposes? As in
health purposes. The idea in my mission is to help millions of people have the ability to make better decisions about their health, so they know which path is the best path for them. Because what's good for somebody and what's good for somebody else is two different things. And people aren't their DNA. It's how their DNA is expressing itself in the environment. So for sure.
Okay, so would you say that your book, Why Are You Sick, Fat and Tired, which is just such a fantastic title. I'm sorry. It's like eye-catching and just makes you then have to think like, okay, oh my goodness. Okay, what's happening in my body? Would you say that it's a bestseller? Is it a guidebook, would you say? Like someone could open it up and look at a chapter and go, okay, let me look at certain aspects of my life and see how I can potentially improve them, or what I can do to improve them to have a healthier body that will take me into my 90s or whatever?
Well, I always go on the premise that knowledge is power, but knowledge is only powerful when you're able to organize it and stack it correctly. So what the book does is it gives you the opportunity to use it as a workbook. It's a guidebook because you write in it. It's a workbook, it's a guidebook, and it's an advocating tool. So when you go in, a lot of times doctors don't have time for anybody anymore. If you're not precise with what you want to ask them, you're gone in 15 minutes. They're walking out the door, whether you're done or not. And so you've got to have your questions, and you have to be bold. You got to use your voice. You got to be visual, and you got to be seen. You have to be present and ask questions that are important to you. So if you do the guidebook, there's a chart in the back where you would, because it's parts of it are you're answering it. And there's a guide. I'm trying to look it up pretty quick right now. On the back of the book, there is a health status chart. I don't know how well your audience could see that.
Yeah.
And so this chart organizes all your organ systems. So somebody does this and they say to me, Dr. Pat, what do you think? Because I've had people who've had high priorities, because your high priority is your weakest link. Have like multiple high priorities and saying like, well, where do I start? Because you got to pick the big monster. And it's like when you're looking at a iceberg, you don't know what's underneath. And a lot of people don't know what's underneath with their health. But my idea is that if you knew every year, like for instance, I think this book's a great book for your New Year's resolution and your health, because you will finally know where to start that health journey, and you'll finally have the actual goal that you should be working towards, as opposed to what you think you should be working towards. Functional medicine doesn't treat everybody the same way. Like everyone who has hypertension doesn't all get the same drug. You've got to take a look at, and also on the nutraceutical part of that, you don't take there's a lot of nutraceuticals that help decrease blood pressure also, for instance, as the example. But you want to water down the problem. You want to go to the root of the reason why you have it in the first place. And one of my biggest mentors in chiropractic always used to say, what you got, he was from out west, so he used to say this with his like southwest accent, what you got isn't necessarily what you got, and so as you got to look below, you got to be a CSI detective.
So, okay, I'm obviously going to get your book for sure. Where can people get it? On Amazon? Where can my audience order this? Because I think because of the health issues going on in the world this year, I think a lot of us are looking at 2021 and saying, okay, how can I proceed forward? If I'm lucky enough to still be alive, how can I proceed forward as healthy as possible, so that maybe even me being healthier with just the body I have now might make me healthier or healthy enough to fight off any other ailments that might come my way, be it the pandemic, COVID, or any other thing. So where can people get this book?
They can get this book. It's on the internet. There's digital versions of it, and there's paper versions of it. The paper versions are like Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And, the thing about the book, when you say what you just said, is significant, because when you're looking at your immune system, like for instance, chapter 7 is about the immune system in this book. It's about, it tells you where you're at. If you answer the questions honestly, and even if you have a low score, you have other organ systems. So remember, we talked about the Swiss watch principle, that you could have a low score now, but given over a period of time, that low score for the immune system could go up. So it might look like it's normal now, but if you've got a lot of other stuff going on in other organ systems, it would trump that function of that. You have to take a look at the whole puzzle, not just one piece of the puzzle, because it doesn't have the answer to it. It's like how it combines all together. So they can get it in Amazon. Amazon has, it's an easy source for a lot of people. I mean, Amazon, ever since coronavirus, is like it's like, it's he's doing really well.
Absolutely. Damn right, Mr. Bezos. Yep. So quickly, before I let you go, I will definitely put the link in on the show notes to make sure that everyone can just click a link to get your book. I'm wondering, is there any way that people can actually connect with you directly, like be able to sort of, send you messages if they have any health questions or health issues, since you've got 35 years of practice and, you've got a lot of great knowledge and advice. So is there any way that people, obviously I found you on LinkedIn, but is there, are you on social media? Are you on Instagram, or can people email you? Do you have a website? How can people get hold of you and ask you, please, Dr. Pat, help me?
I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. And my website has a very interesting feature. So if you go to the page, if you open the page, you'll see me talking. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a microphone and there's a link that you can talk into the mic and you can ask me a question and it comes to my email. And that's a way to do that. There's also a link to my calendar to get 30 minutes of time with me. If people buy the book and they go through the book, they're going like, well, I don't know how to make heads or tails of this, because it's kind of like a DIY, right? Then they can schedule time with me. There's a link in the book that sends them to my calendar specifically to talk to me about the results from the book that they have. So they can do that. Also, we talked a little bit in the very beginning about, and my link for my website is Health Team Network.
I'm going to put it all in the show notes, trust me, so people can just click on it.
So that's basically like, that's the best way to get a hold of me, and also I'm starting to write online courses, so that's one way to be able to work with me in a group setting. And so I'm starting, I have a beta course that's going to be coming up in January. And we still have a couple spaces left. So if anybody would like to check that out and look at that, you can't buy health. If you don't have your health, you can't work, so the course is for the busy professional who wants to have a happy, healthier, more productive, positive, prosperous life and have peace of mind. Because when they do that, they not only do their work well and they excel in their businesses as business professionals, when they get home, they excel as parents and friends.
Yes.
And so that's it. So if you're going to take on and tackle the world, way so many people do, you better have a good plan and you better eat well. That's something I know from personal experience for sure.
That's an incredible place to stop now. That is the message that's at the base of it all. It really is. And that's for each and every one of us to decide and go, okay, because really, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. So I think a lot of people this year are looking at their own health, and it's everything staring us in the eyes, and people are falling left, right, and center. So we have to, we need to do what we can to keep our health as good as it possibly can be for as long as it can be. Thank you, Dr. Pat Boulogne. I don't know why I have to talk like this, but I so appreciate you just imparting this knowledge. Thank you for writing your book. I'm certainly going to be getting it. I'm going to add it to the list of things that I'm getting from Amazon. And I definitely would love to revisit this topic with you. I'd say, give everyone a couple of months into 2021 and sort of see how we're doing and whatever, and give people time to sort of buy it and sort of make a start on making a change in their lives. And I would love for us to sit and chat again and just kind of address some of this some more.
And it doesn't have to be hard. Simpler just mean, when I say simpler, when I was explaining, I used that word before, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like easy. It means it's doable. You have to live life and not let life live you.
Oh my gosh. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pat. I really appreciate your enormous amount of knowledge and nuggets and just thank you for studying and practicing for this amount of time, 35 years plus, to really kind of, this is the year. If there were no other year in history where people are really kind of looking at their health, this is the year going forward. So I'm very happy that I found you when I did. And let's kind of talk again, I'd say in a couple of months, and go from there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I so enjoyed this. This was wonderful.
I love this. I'm so happy
Very
we were
delightful.
able to do it. You know what I mean? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Baby, baby, when I think of you, I get a warm feeling inside.
tuning into Living Out Loud with Loretta. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend or several friends. Post a screenshot of this episode on your Instagram stories and tag me at Loretta Nakwacha. You can also watch this episode with a cold beverage on my YouTube channel. The link is posted below. Lastly, if you have the time, please leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue sharing stories, singing songs, and living our lives really out loud.